Deb, should I plan to go ahead and get started, or do you want me to hold off a few minutes? Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining me on this Friday afternoon. I appreciate you giving up a bit of your time to spend with me and hear about some resources for your classroom connecting population and biodiversity. So hopefully you are here for the session, Make the People Connection. My name is Carol Bleasy, and I made this somewhat awkward slide before I realized that my face would be on here for you all to see. So nice to see you. Carol Bleasy, I'm the Director of Teacher Programs for the Population Education Program. And in case you're not familiar with population education, we are a national nonprofit organization. We do work all over the United States with educators, and our headquarters is in Washington, D.C., so that is where I live and work. And in fact, I'm in my office in D.C. right now, which happens to be right up against a fire station. So if you hear any loud sirens, I might have to just take a pause and let those pass. It happens somewhat frequently. The Population Connection, we're a nonprofit, and we have two main goals, really, to support teachers that want to teach about how population impacts a whole variety of different things. The first of those is that we provide professional development workshops, and we offer those for teachers that are currently teaching. We do a lot of work with college students. They range K through 12. Because our topic is population, you can relate it to a lot of different things: science, social studies, mathematics. It's really cross-curricular. We also develop classroom resources for teaching about population and related topics. And when I say related topics, that means a lot of different things, because humans and our numbers impact so many different things, such as biodiversity, which is, of course, what we're going to focus on today. So, speaking of today, what my plan is for our time together. First, I wanted to talk just a little bit about why population. Why do we care about population? Why does it matter in terms of biodiversity? But then, because this is a session for teachers, I wanted to be sure to give you guys some resources that you'll be able to use in your classrooms. Now, let me go ahead and say that our workshops, the workshops that I usually present, are interactive and hands-on. They're face-to-face. This is actually my very first webinar, so bear with me. And I've tried to pick some things that I could modify into the webinar format and make work in this setting. So hopefully this will go just as smoothly as it does in my head. And then I did want to leave some time for questions at the end if you have any. But really, if you have any questions throughout, I think you can all see the little scroll chat box. Feel free to pop in at any time and ask a question. Forgive me if I don't see it right away, but I will answer it as soon as I do. So why include population when teaching about biodiversity? Well, hopefully we all can agree that biodiversity is vitally important to the health and well-being of humans. Not just the ecosystem services, but it's the spice of life, the variety of life. But while this is true on one hand, humans are actually the underlying cause of much biodiversity loss. One set of statistics that I think is very interesting to help show this is to consider the current rate of extinction with the natural rate of extinction. So all throughout the Earth's history, animals have becoming, or species, I shouldn't say animals, have been becoming extinct. It's a natural process, but the natural rate ends up being about 1 in 500,000. Currently, the current rate of extinction is more like 1 in 1,000. Now that's a really, really big difference. And what that means is that if you take a random species and sort of level out the playing field in terms of all the different things that could impact it, that species is now 500 times more likely to go extinct than it had been prior to current times, or our current times. This little graph, and I hope it's big enough that you can see it, starts in the year 1000 and takes us actually through 2015, our current year, and out to the 2050 projection. And the darker gray graph shows the human population. And the top line, the lighter gray, shows number of species as a percentage. And again, so we see that as the human population has increased, the number of species has decreased. So the question becomes, why? You know, why has that happened? And we're gonna look at that a bit with some actual classroom activities. I will say right from the beginning that a big part, of course, of what we always talk about is our human population numbers and how these increasing numbers have such an impact. We currently have 7.3 billion people living on the planet. We reached 1 billion in the year 1804. We hit 2 billion in 1927. So since 1927, we have added an additional 5 billion plus people. We are currently, humans, are currently growing at a rate where we are adding approximately 1 billion people to the planet every 12 to 13 years or so. 1 billion people being a lot of people, a dozen years arguably not being a whole lot of time. So we impact many, many things, environmental things, social things, all across the board. The very first student resource that I wanted to actually share with you guys is something that's a little sort of different that we do. It's that every year we run a student video contest, and there are categories for both middle school and high school. And the winning students get cash prizes. There are actually they're judged by category, and there's 4 winners per category. The grand prize winners in each category get $1,000, so it's a big prize for students. And the challenge of the contest is to connect population to a selection of other global challenges. In addition to making the connection in a short video, they also need to offer 1 or more ideas for a sustainable solution to that issue. So this year, just in case you guys do work with middle or high school student populations, or teachers that work with those student populations, you do still have a bit of time for students to get in their video. We are currently accepting videos until Thursday, February 25th. And this year's topics are deforestation, public health, and water scarcity. So again, students relate an increasing population to one of those topics and then offer some sort of a solution. So now I want to try, and please speak up in the little chat box if you don't think you're seeing what you're supposed to be seeing. I'm going to pull up the contest website. And it looks like it is not. Maybe if I would type my own website in correctly, that would work out better. So hopefully you can see the main page of our student contest. It says 1 person can change the future of 7 billion across the top. Now, we do offer some teacher resources, which you'll see in the tabs across the top, but you'll also see a tab for the student video contest. And what I wanted to share with you was that last year for the 2014-2015 school year, we actually, one of the topics was the 6th mass extinction. And I wanted to go ahead and actually play the winning video for you guys because it was really well done. Oh, you cannot see what you are showing us here. Well, that's problematic. Let me try one thing. Thank you for letting me know so I don't talk like a moron. Do you see any website right now? Is it still a white screen? You see it? Just a link at the top and the rest is a blank screen. So some are seeing it and some are not. Well, I'll tell you what. Because I don't want some of you to sit with a white screen. I'll just let you know that the website, like I said, is this worldof7billion.org. And these students make some really, really wonderful, inspiring, creative, thoughtful messages that relate population to these other topics. Oh, the website just popped up. Well, that's okay. I'm not going to worry about it. If you're interested in seeing some of those, just visit this worldof7billion.org, and you can see winners not just for the wildlife categories, but the other categories as well. And we'll just move on into some of the other classroom, more traditional classroom resources. So the first real lesson plan that I wanted to share with you all is a lesson called Population Circle. And it looks at the history of human population growth, because that's a really central piece of content for students or anyone to understand when they're thinking about how population relates to something or how population impacts something. And kind of understanding how we got to where we are today, where we have 7.3 billion people living on the planet, is very helpful in that understanding. So the way that this activity works, and hopefully my screen demonstration will give you as good of sense as if you saw it in real life, but the way that this works is you put a circle of yarn down on the ground, and that circle represents the planet. And all of your students are standing outside of the circle. And what's going to happen is that as a group, you're going to travel through time through the last 500 years. So we're going to travel from the year 1510 to the year 2010. We're going to span that 500-year period. As we travel through time, as we go from 1510 to 2010, we are going to populate that circle on the ground with people. And we're going to do it at the rate at which our actual human population increased. So we're going to be seeing kind of the spacing that our population actually, at which our population actually grew. So you put a circle of yarn down on the ground. Then you hand out to each student a little counting card. And I had a few people take pictures holding their counting cards. But you'll see over on the left, there's one that says population circle. It has a 0, and then in parentheses 1510. Over on the right, we see population circle. The number is 75, and in parentheses 1885. There are 28 of these counting cards. They are included in the lesson plan, which I will make sure that you guys all get before we depart today. And so you hand out these. Oh, in fact, here's half of what the sheet of cards look like. So you hand out these cards so all of your students have a card. Like I said, there are 28 cards. The way that you travel through time is by counting. So as a group, you have your class count from 1 to 100. And every time that you say one number, you've just traveled through time 5 years. So when we're at 0, we are in the year 1510. But as soon as we say the number 1, we're in the year 1515. When we say the number 2, we're in 1520. When we say the number 3, we're in 1525. And so on and so forth, so that when we say the number 100, we are in the year 2010. So that is how we time travel. If you want to bring in the actual number component, you can do so. Each card, and therefore each student, would represent 250 million people. That's 1/4 of a billion. So 250 million people. You don't have to bring that into it if you don't want to be that specific. The activity still works, and you still see the change in growth over time, even if you don't bring in that number. So it's up to you. So now everyone is standing around the circle. Everyone has a card. And what I've done is I've created a little circle that's supposed to represent the yarn on the ground. And then these little yellow smiley faces that represent our students in the classroom. 2 of the cards have 0 on them. So right after that, at the beginning, the 2 students who have the cards that say 0 step into the circle. The year is 1510. There are 2 students in the circle, which means there, of course, are people living on the planet in 1510. Maybe not a huge number, but there are people there. So again, we count from 1 to 100, and when the student, when as a group we say the number on a student's card, that is when they step into the circle. Okay, so remember at the beginning, somebody had a 0. That other card I showed you was a 75. When we would say 75, that student would step into the circle. So I just made the slides, and I'm going to count through this. I'm going to go pretty fast because we're just sitting watching. So I don't want to take a lot of time. I would probably do it a lot slower with an actual classroom of students, but for our purposes, I just wanted you to get a sense of it. So I will count by myself. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I'm actually going to stop here. We've traveled through time 100 years. We're in the year 1610. We still only have 2 people in our circle. I'm going to keep counting. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50. I'm going to stop again. Now we are over halfway through our counting, and we still have not added anyone else to the circle. I will tell you, this is the point where 7th graders look at you leading the activity like you've done something wrong. Like, you handed out the wrong cards. You missed something. Why isn't anything changing? But this is when it actually will start to. I'm going to stop counting out loud, but you can see the numbers up in red. So that's the end. And at this point, I always ask students, I ask a few people to share, put into words what you observed during this observation. And you'll always hear maybe something about exponential growth if they are at a point where they're familiar with that term. But otherwise, just that at the beginning, it was really slow. And then as we got closer and closer to the end, to more current times, the number of people going into the circle, they were joining the circle much, much faster. This circle that we see on the screen with these little yellow smiley faces, it doesn't look that packed. When you have a circle of yarn on the ground and your students actually step into it, they really get in there pretty tight. So in addition to seeing the different pace at which population is increasing, they really start feeling the density as well, which is kind of cool. So in the simulation, over 50% of the cards, so the counts from 90 to 100, join the circle in just the last, I'm sorry, over 50% of the cards, so half of the class, joined the circle in just the last 10 counts. So between counting from 90 to 100, over half of your students join the circle just in that little bit of time. What that means in the real world is that over 50% of our global population has been added to the planet since 1960. In just the last 50 years, we have added over 3.5 billion people to the planet. So this activity, it's a fairly straightforward simulation. It does give you the actual population numbers along with the years. So if you wanted to have students do any sort of graphing, they can, you can do that. It also includes some projections. So if you wanted to count into the future and look at some of the projections of growth, you can do that as well. The cards, like I said, are on the lesson plan. It's a PDF, so you can just print out that page, cut those up, and you would have all 28 of the little cards. If you don't have 28 students, you can still do the simulation. You just have to remove some of the cards. Just make sure you're removing sporadic cards, and you don't remove like all of the cards right at the end or all of the cards right at the beginning, just so you can still see the trend. So that is the activity population circle, to give us a foundation of just population. But now I wanted to start connecting our human numbers with some of these other things and tie in the biodiversity angle. And the way that really this is most clear is simply that as our numbers have grown, the demands that humans put on the earth has changed. It has changed and it has increased. We now demand a lot more from the planet than we did 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 500 years ago. So as the human population grows, we use more land, and some of that land gets used very directly for purposes. Other parts, it's an indirect use of land. But some of the big ones, some of the big ways that we are using more land and as a result changing more land is through agriculture, is a huge one, and really anything used to create food products. So both growing crops to eat directly, areas that are used as pasture land or for different animal feed, and then all the land that grows the crops to feed those animals. Additionally, we use a lot of land for resources, for energy, for logging, so for different products, things of that nature. We use a lot of land for building on. We develop a lot of land, and that doesn't always mean the same thing, depending on where you are in the world. In some places, that development means irrigated lawns and houses and suburban sprawl spreading from one place to another. In other areas, that means skyscrapers and big cities and pavement. And in other areas, it's infrastructure that is really lacking, where the development is happening, but in a very sort of subpar way in some of the least developed parts of the world. And then we're also, this isn't really a use of the land, but it's definitely a way that we're changing the land, is through pollution. And some of that is direct pollution. Trash is ending up on the ground. But there's also all sorts of water pollution and air pollution, which are also changing climates, changing ecosystems, and changing habitats. So that's really what I want to move into at this point with our next lesson, A World of Difference. Because really the biggest way that we are impacting biodiversity is by changing habitats. That, as humans, is the number one impact that we're having. We're altering habitats, we're changing habitats, habitats are disappearing, and that's what this activity is going to look at, how as our population numbers increase, that can change an area's biodiversity. So this is another one that I had to get a little bit creative with how I was going to show it to you guys, but I think it's going to work well. It's called A World of Difference. We actually have two versions of this lesson plan. I'm going to make sure you have both of them. The one that's just called A World of Difference is a higher level activity. It's more for probably 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th graders. It's a little more in depth. We look at more species. Then we have another version that has a close name, but it's called A World of Difference Madagascar. And that's really for upper elementary and maybe the 6th, 7th range. Not quite as many species. They don't get quite as much into some of the different probability calculations and so forth. But they both compare the biodiversity of a temperate forest, the biodiversity of a tropical rainforest, and then explore how population impacts these two areas. So here are my props for you all to look at. Students work in pairs, and each pair gets two forest templates, or these are sort of like the empty forests. And you see that there's a temperate forest and a tropical rainforest. And we're just going to assume that each of these squares represents 1 acre of land. So we're comparing the same amount of land in each. In the temperate forest, we're looking at 6 acres, and in the tropical rainforest, we are also looking at 6 acres. So once you give each pair the worksheet that has these forests on it, and I will say that is included in the lesson plan PDF. Once they each have the worksheet, you also give them 2 baggies filled with beans. We use beans because they're really cheap and you can buy them in bulk. But really any small object will work, colored beads, or even little pieces of construction paper. In the lesson plan, we tell you exactly how many varieties you need and how many of each of those to put in the bag. So this is actually the correct portion that you see on your screen here. For the temperate forest, there are just 2 species, but there is 20 of one of those species and 40 of the other species. For the tropical rainforest, in the second little baggie, there are 7 different beans, so 7 different species. And I will admit, off the top of my head, I don't know the exact numbers for them, but I know that I used the right ratio when I created this. We tell the students what the different beans represent. So we see in the temperate forest that those 2 species are a deer and an oak tree. Where in the tropical rainforest, we have 2 different tree varieties, an ant colony, frogs, periwinkle plants, hummingbirds, and jaguars. So now your pairs of students each have the worksheet, and they each have these 2 baggies of beans. So now we're going to actually put the beans onto the forest, or they're going to sort of populate the forests with the different animal species. And there's a worksheet that gives them instructions that goes along with this and says exactly how to do it. And they're not totally strict. Let me see if I have the lesson plan sitting here. They're not totally strict directions, but for instance, with the temperate forest, it'll say with the black beans, the deer, put at least 3 beans in each acre, but no more than 10 beans in each acre. So I put 3 in acre A, I could have put 5, I could have put 7, I could have put 10, so long as I'm between that 3 and 8 range. The same goes for the for the tropical rainforest. For instance, the poison arrow frog, which is the yellow bean. It says that you're to place at least one, but no more than two in any 4 acres. Okay, so it is a little bit complicated, but they're all written out step by step. So again, the yellow one, we put at least 1 bean, but no more than 2, so either 1 or 2 beans, but only in 4 acres, which means that 2 of the acres do not get poison arrow frogs. So this is what the forests can look like when they are completed. This is what your students would end up seeing. The next thing they do is on this sheet, this sort of tracking sheet that we provide, is they count up how many species are in the different, not just the different forests, but the different acres of the forests. And we give them these 2 charts where what they're actually doing in each is they're counting the number of species in each acre. They're not counting the number of individuals in each acre. They're counting the number of species in each acre. So if we go back to those forests, in the temperate forest in acre A, there are 2 species. There's the black beans and the red beans, the deer and the oak trees. So again, we're not counting individuals, we're just counting the number of species. In the tropical rainforest, acre A, we see gray, brown, green, and purple. So there are 4 species. So when we fill that out, and because we're just counting number of species, not individuals, we can just put an X if that species is located in the particular acre. And then at the bottom of each chart, we total up how many species are in that acre. We already started having some discussion at this point. You know, how would the students contrast the biodiversity of the temperate forest and the tropical rainforest? We also have some questions that have the students using some probability and statistics. For instance, looking at the temperate forest, if 1 acre of the temperate forest is cleared, what is the probability that the deer population will change? And now what that question is getting at, it's not that the deer will disappear totally, but just that the population will change. The same goes for the oak tree. In the tropical rainforest, if 1 acre is cleared, what is the probability that the poison arrow frog population will change? You know, what about the rosy periwinkles? So we're looking at just how in that case the individual numbers change. In terms of extinction, you can look at if an acre is cleared, either within the temperate or the tropical rainforest, what is the probability that any species would actually become extinct? Now, in the temperate forest, where every single acre has 2 species, the probability that any species will become extinct by just clearing 1 acre is 0, because those species are found in every single acre. So if we cleared acre C, neither the deer species nor the oak trees are going to go extinct. They are found in other acres. However, if we look at the tropical rainforest, you know, what is the probability that any species will become extinct in the tropical rainforest if we clear just 1 acre? In this case, there are actually some species that are only found in 1 acre. At the bottom of the graph, if you take a look at the jaguar, that species is only found in acre F. The hummingbirds, that species is only found in acre B. So it's possible by clearing 1 acre that an entire species could become extinct in this case. Now we actually have the students using those 2 forests made of beans that they have created, try and think about those as being forests in the real world. So a real temperate forest and a real tropical rainforest. And the setting that we give for them is the United States, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Now, the reason we chose these two areas is because the U.S. has temperate forests, the Congo has rainforests. In fact, that Congo basin in that sort of central western part of Africa, that's the second largest rainforest in the world, second only to the Amazon. It covers 6 or 7 countries. It's not too much into Angola, but that African rainforest, which is a dry rainforest actually, and it's kind of interesting, does span 7 different countries, one of which is the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So we have the temperate forest in the U.S., the rainforest in the Congo. Now, the rate at which human population, is increasing in these two areas is very different. In the United States, we have a growth rate of approximately 0.6%. In the Congo, the growth rate of the human population is approximately 3.1%. So it's much higher in the Congo. The population is increasing much faster in the Congo than it is in the U.S. So at this point, you give your students, or you give each pair of students a dice, and they're going to roll the dice and use that to clear the rainforest. That sounds kind of weird, but what I mean by that is they're going to roll the dice, and if they roll a 1, they will clear an acre from the temperate forest. But if they roll a 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, they're going to clear an acre from the tropical rainforest, because the growth rate in the Congo is about 5 times the growth rate in the United States. And by doing this with the die, you have about a 5 times more likely chance of getting one of those, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, than you do of rolling a 1. Okay? So now we go to our forests, and I added a little screen over here to remind us about the dice rolls. And I did actually roll these when I was creating the PowerPoint, because I wouldn't be able to manipulate the point once it was up here to share with you all. So you're going to have to trust me that these were real rolls. And so what we do, we have die roll number 1, and I rolled a 2. Now a 2 is part of the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 group, which means we clear an acre within the tropical rainforest. Our second die roll, I rolled a 6. So again, we clear an acre within the tropical rainforest. Die roll number 3, I rolled a 5. Again, we're clearing the tropical rainforest. Die roll number 3, I rolled a 5. Again, we're clearing the tropical rainforest. Die roll number 4, I rolled another 5. We clear another acre within the tropical rainforest. By die roll number 5, I finally rolled a 1, which means that we clear an acre in the temperate rainforest. That's as far as I went. With your students, you would let them continue doing this and tracking which of the forests gets cleared the fastest, or how they compare to each other. But like I said, I didn't continue making all of these slides. But again, comparing the simulation to the real world, in the simulation, the acres of those 6 acres we had, the acres of the tropical rainforest, were lost at a much faster rate than the acres were lost within the temperate forest. And that matches what's happening in the real world, where the greatest amount of deforestation is happening in the tropical rainforest. In fact, about 38 million acres are cut per year. In addition to just doing the manipulation and the different probability and statistic calculations, there's a lot of discussion questions that you can have your students either do in their pairs, or you can regroup as a class and do it as a large discussion. Having students really consider, what does it mean to be losing this amount of the tropical rainforest in a given year? What does it mean for the species? What does it mean for the ecological services that we as humans rely on? Remember, we started out by saying that while at the same time that that biodiversity is so vitally important to us as humans, or that cause, for a big part of it, of the loss of biodiversity. So trying to align those two things and helping students work through that. I did want to show you just some photos of people taking part in this activity. You'll see down in the bottom left, those are just the little bags of beans that I use when conducting this lesson. Up in the upper right, you'll actually notice that those are egg cartons, which I think are actually a lot easier to use depending on the age of your students, perhaps than just a flat piece of paper that has the 2/4. So that's just a little alternative option if you can get your hands on some egg crates, and you can give each group 2 of those little half cartons. It works really well. So that's the lesson, A World of Difference. Again, there are those 2 versions, Basic World of Difference and then A World of Difference Madagascar, which I'll make sure you get both of those in just 1 second. The last thing I wanted to share with you all is a new website that we just created this past summer that we're so excited about. It's worldpopulationhistory.org. And the site as a whole shows a glimpse into the last 2,000 years of history. Actually, a little more than 2,000 years of history. It starts in the year 1, and it looks at population growth from that year all the way up to present, and then projects our growth to the year 2050. In addition to just looking at population, it incorporates a lot of other environmental and social statistics that have impacted or been impacted by our human numbers, one of which is how we use land. Now, I could spend the next 15 minutes talking about the great things on this website, but I really am just going to, for our purposes today, focus on this land use overlay because I think it's pretty interesting and it relates a lot to what we're talking about. So just so you know how to get here or how I got these screenshots, since I didn't have a lot of luck sharing my screen with you all, you can see just on this picture on the slide where it says overlays over in the upper left. So the very first overlay, when you click on that, says human land use. So I clicked on that to select the human land use overlay. And then under map features, I actually deselected the population dots. So you don't see any of the dots where population are, just because taking the screenshots, it got a little tight because the images are kind of small. So, oh, I guess I could have showed you that while having a bigger picture of the map. But anywho, the first year that we have data for how land is being used by humans is in the 1700s. And over on the right, you see our key, red being dense settlements, blue villages, orange rangelands. The lighter green is semi-natural lands. The purple, pardon me, is wild lands. And then the darker green is croplands. So in 1700, we see that a lot of the earth is covered in purple, wild lands, and the lighter green, which is semi-natural lands. We see a bit of the orange, the rangelands, and just a bit of the darker green, which is croplands. Then when we go to 1800, we see a bit of an expansion of the semi-natural lands and a bit of an expansion of the croplands. It's not a huge change quite yet at this point. When we go on to the 1900s, we really start to see a big influx in both the rangelands and the croplands. And then by the year, or into the 2000s, especially the rangelands, that orange has really covered a much larger area on our planet's surface. And the next slide, I just took the US and Canada so we could look at something with all of the 4 time spans together. And we see how much it has changed from the 1700s just in the last 300 years, and how what used to be an area that was almost predominantly wildlands, started becoming somewhat only semi-natural. Then we added some cropland and rangeland, and now into the 2000s, the U.S. at least is almost entirely rangelands, semi-natural lands, and croplands. But you can even see some of those dense settlements, that bright red over where New York and New England, the New England states, and then also in California, so along the coast. I think you can even see a little tiny dot where Chicago is. So that's a great site to explore and really make some connections using actual data and geography on how, as human numbers have increased in certain areas, it has impacted the land in those areas. One final lesson plan I want to mention to you, though it's not something I can really share in any sort of visual way because it's a research-based lesson. This is something really meant for high school students. It's called Bye Birdie. But it has students determining which factors they think should be considered when deciding the fate of an endangered species. So we have an endangered species, and whether or not we are going to be proactive, what are the factors that we should consider? Once they've come up with their list of factors, they have to do some research on a specific species that is currently endangered and create a persuasive presentation to justify why we should be doing everything we can to save that species. This is, like I said, a great one for high school age students. It ties in really well with NGSS if your state is doing next generation science standards. And again, I will give you that PDF. So just to final kind of recap some things. So the lesson plans that we covered, I think you should be able to click on these links and they should be live, maybe. So you can download them. A World of Difference Madagascar, I actually am going to be able, I think, if I do this correctly, to put into our chat box, send select files as reference chat. I think this will work. Yes? So presumably you can click on that, and you'll be able to get the that lesson plan. If you haven't had a chance to click on these, I'm going to click off of this slide really fast, but then I'll come back to it. So don't worry. Because I just wanted to mention a few other things. I wanted to reiterate that we have this wonderful student contest that we run every year, the World of 7 Billion contest, which you can find at worldof7billion.org. We talked about that earlier, so I won't get into it. Again, this worldpopulationhistory.org website, that's the one where you can look at the different overlays and population on the map and explore all of that more in detail. And then lastly, I just wanted to make sure you're all aware of our main program website, populationeducation.org, because there are a lot of different resources in terms of lesson plans, demo videos, more information on the contest and other websites. There are student readings and graphics and all sorts of great things that will really supplement your teaching of population and any of these related topics. So that is everything that I had planned for you all today. I am going to go back to this screen in case anyone is wanting to download these lesson plans. Oh, I will mention at the very bottom for Bye Birdie, excuse me, it's actually one lesson plan in an entire high school unit on biodiversity. That unit includes a student reading that's a case study, so there's a background reading, a case study reading, and 3 lesson plans, one of which is Bye Birdie. So that link will actually take you to the entire unit. So if anyone does have any questions, I am more than happy to attempt to answer them. You can write them into the chat bar. If not, thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope some of this will be useful for you down the road. Yes, I can. But you know what? It's going to take me just 1 second. Hold on. Okay. Let me just upload this. Biodiversity. Okay. There you go. Oh, I don't know why I'm typing. I guess I forgot you all could hear me. Well, I guess it doesn't seem like there are any questions. I don't want to log off if there are, but I think we're probably all done. I will put up, actually, I have, I guess, a last slide that has my email on it in case anyone wants to be in touch. So thanks. You're very welcome. And be in touch if you're looking for any other specific topics, because I can always, send you additional things that would be, if they would be useful. Okay, I'm going to sign off. Okay, thanks, Deb. This was fun.